Everybody, welcome to another edition of the Stitches podcast. As always, I'm your host, Luke Manderfeld. I've got with me my man, Robert Stangler. No Nick Budig this week. He is off. He'll be back next week. But it's the two-man show today. Robert, how's it going? Trade deadline talk. Already somehow? We're already at the trade deadline in this weird 60-game season.
Yeah, it is a wild one for sure. 2020 has been everything but epic.
Yeah, and it's still hard to peg down this season. Like you said, like just weird things happening. Sometimes hard to watch, not knowing why things are happening.
Yes, managing for sure.
And this trade deadline seems to be kind of the same, where don't really know what to expect. Like based on the research I had done beforehand and just kind of seeing on the news reports on Twitter, doesn't sound like anyone's really expecting any blockbusters. I mean, last year and, years before, you'd always have like that Manny Machado or something like that. Zach Greinke, like the Astros making moves last year. Like you think they have those big names. This shit is really not one. There's not one big name out there. And I think it's a mix of there's not a lot of big players in the final years of their contract, and it's a 60-game season, so teams aren't really willing to give up big prospects or anything like that to get a player for 30 games, essentially. And so that's what we're dealing with. But we're going to try to break it down the best we can. We've found some names, some under-the-radar names as well. And we'll also be breaking down, as we know, a lot of our listeners are Twins fans. So we're breaking down the Twins' potential plans and going into all of that. But before we get into that, I just want to remind everyone that we're on all the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. And you can send your questions and comments. You don't think our players we brought up are even remotely close to what you had in your mind. Or if we're way off on the Twins, you got to send us your comments because we can talk about it. We love feedback. We're at thestitchespodcast@gmail.com, thestitchespodcast@gmail.com. Follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Just search @StitchesPod. Okay. So we're going to forego the name game this week. Like I said, just Robert and I this week. It's not really fun with one person. We'll bring it back for Nick next week. So let's just dive right into it, man. I think a good place to start would be the Twins because let's just break down a team, and then we'll get into some players. For you, what do you think the Twins are going to be looking at in this next week? It's been a decent start for them. Probably not as good as you would like it to be, especially on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of slow starters. And Nelson Cruz has really been the biggest consistent hitter in that lineup. Other than that, it's been all over the place. The pitching, surprisingly, has been really good, the starting pitching, but it's starting to taper off a little bit. But Kenta Maeda has been really, really solid. The bullpen's been good, too, besides a few players here and there. What do you think the Twins will be targeting in this next week?
Well, they got to go for bullpen help, and I think that they also have to get another outfielder. With Buxton being down, you look at the outfield, there's a lot of left-handed batters with Eddie Rosario, Jake Cave. It's not something that they want to really have as far as starting. I think they need to get some kind of platoon going in there with a right-handed batter, especially an outfielder. So I would suggest maybe someone like Kevin Pillar of the Boston Red Sox. I believe he signed only a one-year deal. It was either a minor league deal or something like that, whereas it's not a lot. It shouldn't cost too much. You still get that great Buxton-like defense as far as good speed. The guy leaps and grabs literally everything. I mean, if you haven't seen Pillar play baseball, this guy is a gamer. I think he's a really good fit in Minnesota to kind of ease the pain of not having Buxton once again. I think Buxton could come back at some point, but it's always an if, and Kevin Pillar is cheap, and it's just a great fit, I feel like. And Pillar has never really had an opportunity to get on a run with the team. The Blue Jays have been really bad since he's been there. The Giants were bad when he was there, and he had his breakout year last year. I think it'd be a good sign for the Twins to get someone like him, and I think he could really help. Like I said, the left-handed platoon with Rosario, who struggles against lefties. Jake Cave struggles against lefties. Marwin Gonzalez actually does not struggle as far as being a switch hitter, but you never know with him if he's going to have to play third base with Donaldson out. So I really think getting an outfielder, if it's not Kevin Pillar, someone that's a right-handed batter is huge for the Twins, and it will not cost much.
I'll be honest, when you first brought this up to me, I didn't really think too much about it because I thought, going into the season, the Twins had so much depth everywhere.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look down their depth chart, but now, Donaldson's out. So Marwin Gonzalez is playing a lot of infield these days. And Buxton is out. So Cave's playing the outfield. Kepler's playing center field. And you brought up the point about they have a lot of lefties in the outfield. So Pilar would be a very good complementary piece. And, Buxton at this point is injury prone. Like, you can say what you want about him. He's got shoulder inflammation because he slid home at home plate for the winning run, in a game a few nights ago. I mean, that's just a baseball play, and he's hurt. There's no saying this is a freak injury anymore. This is who he is. He's an injury risk guy. So, the more I thought about it, Kevin Pillar does make a lot of sense because, plus defense and center field will make up, not as good as Buxton, but he's pretty damn good out there. And, the stick is consistent. It's better than Buxton this year so far. He's hitting 278, 340 on base percentage, 3 homers. He's always got a little speed too, which the Twins like. So I think it does make a lot of sense. Even if Buxton is healthy the rest of the season, which is obviously a big if when he does come back, I think he makes a lot of sense off the bench. And Rosario's been having a rough start. And so if he continues having a rough start and he doesn't recapture the form, I wasn't a big fan of Rosario last year too. So Pilar could get at bats in this outfield if it continues this way. So I think it does make a lot of sense. And, he was beloved in Toronto. And he seems like a really good teammate, a really good player that fans like. So I think he'd be liked a lot in Minnesota.
I think
he seems like a Twins type of player, like hard nosed, like blue collar type player.
Yes, love it.
Yeah, so I agree with that. But let's move on to probably the more likely scenario for the Twins is probably what a lot of contending teams are going to do is probably strengthen the bullpen, strengthen the pitching staff. Like I said, the starting rotation's been a pleasant surprise. So I don't think they're going to go out and get a starter, because you're going to have Michael Pineda coming back here soon. His suspension is almost over. Rich Hill, who knows about his health, but, he's back. Homer Bailey's still hurt. Kenta Maeda's looked really strong. Barrios had a good start as well. So, I feel like the starting rotation is good. You probably can't add another one in the mix there because you got guys coming in and out. I don't know. They have a lot of depth there. But when you look at the bullpen side of things, it's been good, but you have some of those ifs, especially when you look at the closer role and the long relief role. You have guys like Zach Littell and Lewis Thorpe and, they've Devin Smeltzer. Those guys have not really cut it in terms of getting innings out of the bullpen. You need someone who can kind of come in and just you don't have to worry about it, especially for a contender. You can't rely on those guys to get, even in a series, you might have to turn to some of those guys. Twins had to do it last year. And then you look at, Taylor Rogers has been really bad this year. He looks like he needs to figure it out. But in this short season, you don't have a lot of time. So I think the Twins are going to go get a bullpen arm. A guy I really like for them is more the long relief type who can kind of swing in and out of the rotation as needed. Daniel Norris for the Detroit Tigers has been kind of a sleeper this year, and kind of a sleeper for this year and the last month of last year. The Tigers obviously aren't contenders, but Daniel Norris has been quietly good out of their bullpen. 13 innings, 2.77 ERA. His whip is exactly at 1, 11 strikeouts. Now, you look back at his splits last year, September and October, he had a 3 ERA in 15 innings. Daniel Norris has struggled a lot, don't get me wrong, but a big prospect back in his day. And now maybe in this new role where he's not really expected to be in the rotation all the time, more as like a long relief bullpen type, we've seen a lot of pitchers find success, and I think he might be finding some success with that heavy sinker ball. So I think I like Dan Norris as a target for them in that bullpen, and it would be very cheap to get him. He's not worth very much. And it would be a good addition for this well-rounded team.
Yeah, I like that. I think that would be nice to have a nice lefty like him in there as well. I mean, that's
for sure.
A lot of teams need a lefty that can get it done, not just long relief, but in big spots even. If he has to get just one out as far as there being 2 outs and he has to get that third out of the inning just to face a tough lefty, so be it. It's a valuable asset to have. Yeah,
and I think if we're going to look down the list here of relievers in the league, probably the dream scenario would be getting like Trevor Rosenthal. He might be the best reliever on the market right now, honestly. He's kind of recaptured some of his form when he's with the Cardinals. He's now with the Royals. 11 innings. 1.59 ERA, 11.9 strikeouts per 9. The walks are still there, though. That's what worries me, a 4 walk per 9. But he's been really good for the Royals, and he's going to be highly sought after. Do you think the Twins could go out and get a guy like Trevor Rosenthal or even like a Matt Barnes with the Red Sox who's been, not good this year but good in the past? And they just got rid of Brandon Workman, who is their top reliever as well.
Yeah, I think they do have a shot at Matt Barnes, but I think realistically, Daniel Bard of the Rockies is a little bit more sneaky option. I think there's something there as far as analytics. I think he fits the profile just a little bit better than Rosenthal. Rosenthal to me seems more old school with that 100 cheese, even though 100 is not exactly the old school method. But the way that Bard just came on the scene again, as people don't know about his story, definitely go check it out. He was not in baseball for a few years. He had a lot of injuries, and he just found it in Colorado. So there's something to be said that if you put him in Minnesota, a team that really knows how to use pitching nowadays, this guy could really excel in that bullpen. So it makes more sense to me than Rosenthal. Rosenthal also, I think, low-key has a little bit of a head. I don't think that's good chemistry for a team like the Twins. I think Bard is really a quiet guy who could really gel well as well. This is just beyond the numbers. There's some chemistry there. I really like the Bard move.
Well, I think you look into the numbers here. And by the way, going to his story, he hadn't pitched since 2013 with Boston. Yeah. I remember when he pitched with Boston, he was kind of a nobody. No one really thought about him. But, he reemerges this year. He has 12 innings. The 4.5 ERA, isn't that pretty? But you look at the underlying numbers here. 10.5 strikeout per 9, a 0.8 walks per 9, which makes his FIP a 2.39, which FIP measures the difference between ERA and it's used against ERA to measure kind of statistics that it takes out fielding out of the equation essentially. So a better pitcher does it striking batters out or doing things that don't involve fielders, your lower your FIP will be. So Bard has been very good. It's just not showing up in kind of the top level numbers, but when you dig a little deeper, he's strong. And that's probably a guy the Twins like, because the Twins front office is obviously very, very smart, and they know that. So I like that pick as well. We had discussed some of these names before the podcast. Jason Shreve for the New York Mets is kind of a sneaky name too. He was traded from the Yankees to the Cardinals a few years back in that Luke Voigt trade. The Cardinals got him and Giovanni Gallegos. It actually turned out to be a good deal for the Cardinals because both those relievers were pretty solid. Gallegos is like one of their best relievers right now. But now Shreve's with the Mets, and he's having a really good season as well. He's been kind of in middle relief in that bullpen that's kind of been a mess. Well, the Mets are a mess in general. But Jason Shreve's actually a good name. Like I said, I don't think the Twins are going to go out and get someone big. They're a very well-rounded team. But Shreve, 17 strikeouts in 11 2/3 innings, 3.09 ERA. I like him a lot too. And these aren't big names. Like I said, we don't expect big names. These are small names that really you need to win a World Series. The Twins need these kind of like well-rounded bullpen names. So, all right, let's see. Any other name you want to talk about in terms of bullpen? We've got a few guys on here. Brandon Kinsler for the Marlins, but it looks like the Marlins might be buyers at this deadline, which is very interesting because they're actually contending with their COVID-19 team. David Phelps has reemerged as actually a pretty solid option. And then Pedro Strop for the Brewers has been pretty good too. And looks like the Brewers might be selling. For the Reds. The Reds, sorry. Yeah. Yep. I'm going to flip around. Phelps for the Brewers, Strop for the Reds. Yep. They're both actually having some decent years. Some former names, like Strop used to be really good. Phelps back in the day used to be pretty decent too. So, So there's some names out there that might go to the Twins, and don't be shocked if they do. All right, we're going to go over some names now. So some players, not really talking about a specific team. We're going to talk about some players that might be on the move for the trade deadline. Number one on our list is kind of the most talked about one. Are Mike Clevinger and Zach Plesac going to get dealt from the Indians? Obviously, they defied protocol. They went out. They essentially got suspended by the Indians because they went out and defied protocol. And then they got sent down to their alternative training campsite. And players on the team have been very vocal, like Francisco Lindor, not happy with them. And that's obviously a team leader. So a lot of rumors about will they just deal them instead of dealing with that chemistry issue. Robert, what are your thoughts on this? Obviously, two really good pitchers. Clevenger's, I feel, is a lot more solid than Plesac, but Plesac's having a good year before the suspension.
Yeah, I think Plesac is having a pretty good year, and he's looked pretty good as far as with the slider. I think it's either a curveball or slider. I always get them mixed up. It's like that slurve hybrid
breaking ball
kind of deal. Breaking ball. Yeah, I'll just go with breaking ball.
Yeah.
And then he's able to locate the fastball up in the zone, even though he only throws 92, 93, and also hitting his spots away. So that makes it very valuable, making that slider even better. He's striking out just about everybody. And then you talk about Clevinger. Clevenger's been there. He's had a few injuries here and there. But I call him a finesse pitcher. I just don't think he's a complete pitcher. He reminds me of a Bauer type, where they get a lot of strikeouts. They just don't go deep into the games, and they just don't have that finish. They get ahead and then they mess around and make it 3-2. So they'll go 0-2 to 3-2, and you're just like, why don't you just put them out? Like give them a put out pitch or something, or strike him out on something that makes sense. They're like messing around, finessing, and somehow I see Plesac doing that as well. For me, you call them good pitchers. I think these are guys that the Indians really don't need. After seeing this kid come up, Tristan McKenzie, we talked about young pitchers last week. Tristan McKenzie looked amazing, and it's simple mechanics, everything about him. I love it. Whereas these two, there's something off about them where I just don't think they're going to fit in. Now, you talked about Lindor, for example, not being with the group on this, but Lindor might not even be an Indian next year. He's going to be in a tough spot. There's talks about him getting traded. Maybe not now, but maybe, who knows? If he's not there, then does it really matter if Clevenger and Plesac are in the club? Like, I mean,
I'm sure there's other players that
but they haven't really been vocal about it.
So like, obviously, they have Carlos Carrasco, who had leukemia,
but he didn't really say anything.
No, but like, just because they didn't say anything in the media.
Pluto was the one that really spoke out.
Well, like, just because they didn't say anything in the media doesn't mean they're not speaking up in the clubhouse. You know,
that makes sense. I guess that's just one scenario how I would look at it. To me personally, I don't think either of these two are really that great. The way they've pitched in their careers, from Plesac being early on, like last year, and just right now, even though his stuff is playing, maybe so could be lucky. I don't know with the season shortened. I think both of them are 3 starters. I don't think they're 2s. I don't think they're 1s. They haven't really shown any signs for me. Yeah, maybe Clevenger can strike out 200 batters. But you know what? Ian Kennedy struck out a lot of batters with the Diamondbacks and stuff. A lot of people said he wasn't even a 2. So I really personally think these two are overrated. And even if they get dealt, then it's not the worst thing in the world, because the Indians will find someone. They bring up these Savalis, these Tristan McKenzies. I mean, they come out of nowhere. Tristan McKenzie used to be a top 100 prospect, got hurt, and now he's not even on the radar anymore.
Which, by the way, sidetrack, that is the most bogus thing I've ever heard. Like, Tristan McKenzie falling off a top 100 list because of injuries. Have you ever heard of Byron Buxton? Like, this dude had the most injuries I've ever seen as a prospect, and it, like, kept him out of the majors for 2 years, but he was still, like, top 5 every year. You couldn't keep McKenzie on the top 100 for a little, like, they totally miss. He looks so good. I mean, he's a skinny dude, though. So, like, I can kind of see where they're coming from.
Yeah, there's concerns there.
Like I said, they could see where they're coming from. But, like, the dude throws upper 90s with a really good breaking ball.
I mean, his command is just like Chris Paddock's, and Paddock was ranked super high. What's so different about Paddock?
I feel like just like this old school, like, oh, he's a slender frame, so he's going to get hurt easier. It's like, well, when you get in the majors, you're on different plans. Like, I feel like he's going to bulk up, and plus, like, you can't, like, pitcher injuries are the most random thing. You just, like, can't predict them. It could happen to anybody. Like,
he's not throwing 100. He's throwing like 94, 96. I think was the best I seen him top out.
It's like mid 90s.
Yeah, so he's not overthrowing. He's just a pitcher. And that being said, Clevenger and Plesac to me just aren't pitchers. They finesse, they mess around, and then they see the attitude outside of the clubhouse. I just don't think these guys are even relevant anymore.
I honestly don't think they'll get dealt, because I think the Indians, I don't know. I just feel like I don't see it happening, because that would just kind of create a lot of – I think they're going to come back. I think everything will be, forgiven. They just need some time away. So I don't see it happening. But this is kind of the big rumor around it. And I think it's a big rumor because there aren't a lot of big names in the deadline. So these two are kind of like the biggest names out there, honestly.
True, especially for pitching.
Yeah. So on the offensive side of the ball, we kind of bounced around some names, but the one we settled on that could be on the move, Kyle Seager, obviously third baseman for the Mariners. He's had his own injury woes as well, but also a very good slugger. Where do you think he could be on the move to, or I guess what do you see him end up being after a trade?
Well, there's 2 options here. One being the Braves, because they've had to mess with Riley and Camargo, and I think he's controllable till 2022, if I'm not mistaken. So that adds a lot of value.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, those are 2 bigger prospects for the Braves that we just haven't really seen their full potential, and you think that they were just going to keep running it out there. But that makes that lineup so much better. You add a Seager in there. I mean, a lot of people don't like Seager, think he's kind of overrated. But his glove is still good at the eye test. It's not the sabermetrics way where he's not going to get good defensive WAR. That's not who he is. He's just a good ball player as far as defense. He's consistent. I mean, he's putting out better than he usually does. He's definitely overperforming a little bit. Could be because of the shortened season. But Kyle Seager is a game changer. I mean, he is a good player. I love this guy. But if I wasn't going to say the Braves, I honestly think the Cardinals should take a shot at him. I don't know what they would give up. I mean, they have a lot of surplus of pitching. I don't think it's going to cost a ton. It'll cost a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be like a number 3 prospect to get Kyle Seager. The Cardinals need someone to anchor in that lineup with Goldschmidt. It's just not – it's not deep enough, and you don't know where free agent signings are going to go nowadays with guys getting signed for $200, $300 million, and the Cardinals don't seem like a team that wants to put out that much money unless they're really sure about a guy like
they have like no money.
Well, that too, exactly.
They have all their contracts up.
Yeah. I feel like Kyle Seager would be a great fit there because he's a lefty. He could maybe hit cleanup right behind Goldschmidt. I just think there's not enough protection for Goldie right now, and DeYoung could slot in 5th, makes it a little bit better, a little bit thicker. I like it. I know you're a Cardinals fan. You might not be the biggest Seager fan about it.
I'm in for it because, you know, Tommy Edman was supposed to be a starter, and he's been not good this year.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he hasn't even played that much, honestly, for a guy who's supposed to be starting every day, you know. They got Dylan Carlson up. He's been struggling a little bit. He did his first home run yesterday, so you hope that sparks something. They definitely need somebody like a Kyle Seager. I'm totally on board with it. We had talked about this. It was like before they got Goldschmidt, even like getting Josh Donaldson at one point. Like it's always been like third base. They really haven't figured it out. Whereas like they have DeYoung, Wong, and Goldie now. They just need that third baseman, and their infield's probably fine.
Now Seager's not young. I mean, he's like 30 plus, but it adds that veteran leadership a little bit. And Seager's really one of those guys also that hasn't been in the spotlight in the postseason where maybe he takes off. Look at Daniel Murphy. He went off with the Mets and the Nationals. Got opportunities, and he did it as a left-handed batter. What if Kyle Seager did it too? You never know. I think this is an opportunity for a team like St. Louis to really take advantage of a solid player.
Now, the one thing I could kind of see against that is that, you know, he's got kind of a big contract. I think it's $15 million a year.
I feel like Seattle would eat a ton of it.
So, that would have to be kind of in the factor. And I don't know what the Cardinals would give up. It wouldn't be any top prospect, but Cardinals have prospects.
It could be that one guy that one guy in their bullpen, I cannot remember his name right now.
Like in the majors right now?
Yeah. What's his name? He throws a little harder. It could be him and maybe like
everybody.
Else. It could be Cabrera. That's what it is.
Oh, Genesis Cabrera.
I feel like they could trade him and somebody else, and Seager could fall into the laps of the Cardinals.
Yeah, Genesis Cabrera. Yeah, he's pretty solid, and he was like a former prospect bullpen guy now. Yeah.
Yep, I could see it.
Because I feel like Genesis Cabrera, like Alex Reyes, is kind of taking that role now as like a hard throwing bullpen arm. So, all right. So those are kind of two names on the pitching and hitting side that we had our eyes on. Going to some of maybe the lesser known names or less likely names to get traded. Number 1 on that list, Lance Lynn, maybe the best pitcher in baseball right now. And I'm not even kidding. This dude throws literally just a fastball, and he is killing the game.
Not anymore. He's actually throwing his cutter more, and
it's still a fastball.
It is, but he's like mixing it up with the change. He's throwing it more than he did last year. He's looking like more of a complete pitcher than just.
I know, but like majority fastballs, whether it's a cutter, whatever. Sure. 39 innings, which is crazy already at this time of the year. Already got 39 innings. He's striking out 9.6 batters per inning. His ERA is 1.37. Looking like a Cy Young contender early on. Where do you see Lance Lynn? Where do you think he could go, or do you think it'll actually happen? This is a big name.
This one's really tough. I mean, I don't really know how you can even make a trade here. If I just had to go on a whim here, I would say the Yankees. And I know they had him last year, and it didn't really – or not last year, a couple years ago for a little bit, and it didn't work out when the Twins traded him to the Yankees. But I think the Yankees could really take advantage of this, get a controllable starter, because Paxton's not looking like himself anymore with the injuries and everything, and Tanaka the same way. Lance Lynn's a really big starter, and he has a lot of stuff kind of like Garrett Cole, where it would be really scary to see Cole and Lance Lynn in your 1-2 punch in that rotation. And if you want to talk about a guy that I think Texas could really utilize, I think Estevan Florial is a name that could be bounced around, or even Clint Frazier. I mean, these are two really good outfielders as far as ranks of top prospects. I don't think it would just be those guys, but they would definitely be centerpieces. Lance Lynn of the Yankees seems like the best fit, and I think he would. Do you think
they'd include like an Andujar, who they just sent
that
down?
That would make maybe the trade more reasonable. I really could see that too.
Like
I think it could even be both those guys.
Kind of the major
league ready. It could even be both. It could be Frazier and Andujar.
It would probably have to be, honestly.
I mean, Lance Lynn, like I said, you said actually, he's one of the best pitchers, not just this year, but last year.
He signed through next year.
Yeah, he was top 5 in Cy Young last year. I mean, this guy is really good. It's unfortunate the Twins didn't get the best out of him, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Texas
Yeah.
knows how to deal with pitching.
Another team I could maybe see being in the mix, they might not have the trade bait for it, but the Braves, their rotation is just ravaged right now. They have one good pitcher. It's like Max Fried, and that's like about it.
Yeah,
And so, like, they could get Lance Lynn. They're contenders. That's a team I picked to win the division. I just don't know if they had the farm system to make a deal happen.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I just think right now with all their injuries, I think getting Lance Lynn is just too much to swallow right now.
Probably not worth it.
Yeah, I don't see it. They got to
run.
Because
like I feel like you're right. Like if the Rangers were going to deal Lance Lynn, which is probably more unlikely.
I mean, you got to ask for
They're going to ask for a lot because they don't have to give up for him. They don't.
No,
the Rangers are not like out of contention yet. Like
no,
they're still in it because the Astros haven't. They're not good this year. It's been the Athletics really, and so like it's still up for grabs. So the Rangers might not even sell that much, if at all.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's kind of an intriguing one. I mean, the Rangers, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because they have like if they were going to contend, it would have to start now. It's not like they've been good, but it's up for grabs because the Astros.
Well, Minor has been awful this year, and he was actually pretty good the last couple of years, so that's unfortunate for them.
So is Lyles. He's terrible.
Yeah, and Lyles is bad. So Minor's also another guy that's been on the trading block. So if he goes, then you're thinking maybe Lance Lynn has a possibility too. I mean, they don't have to do that, but that could be the route.
All right, another name that popped up on the pitching side again, Kevin Gausman, has actually been kind of revived his career. I don't know if I should say that because it's not been like the most amazing thing, but he's on the Giants now. He's in the rotation. A 4.65 ERA isn't that sexy, but when you kind of dig into the numbers a little bit, a 12.2 strikeout per nine, which is definitely one of the tops among starting pitchers out there, and a 3.11 WHIP. So if you look below the numbers, he actually has some pretty good some of those good strikeout stats you like to see, and he's not walking a lot of guys, which was his issue before. Kevin Gausman, I think you brought him up last week, Robert, as a guy that you were kind of intrigued by. Do you think he could be on the move, and could he help a contender out?
Yeah, I think Kevin Gausman should be traded. Where he goes a little bit more. It's tough, really. I think he would fit in a team like Oakland. I think the A's do have a pretty good rotation with Montas not being the same. Chris Bassett's kind of iffy here and there, not exactly consistent. That's just one place I'd put him. I think Gausman would be a nice fit for the A's to really solidify that rotation, throws hard. You talk about fastball. This guy throws 98 now after the injuries with the Orioles, and he has just been pounding the zone. I don't know if he's a starter necessarily just because he was with the Giants. It makes more sense. But if he goes to a team like Oakland, maybe he goes in that bullpen. When I think of Gausman, I think of how the Brewers do their bullpen and how they've done their starting rotation. This is a guy that the Brewers, I think, would love to have in their team. So maybe even the Brewers try and go after him.
Or the Rays.
Or the Rays.
With all their injuries.
Rays. That's true. The Rays would be a good fit, too.
He's a Rays-type player.
Yeah, that's a good point. So as far as what you could get back for him, who really knows? I mean, it's really hard to –
Probably not much.
probably not.
With his history, and it's not like he's not pitching that well. It's just more the strikeout numbers that he's a free agent at the end of or next year actually. So just 1 year deal.
Yep.
And this is a guy actually bounced around for the Twins as well because he could be a long relief type role and also swing into the rotation when needed, which the Twins like to have. So there's a lot of teams out there that kind of like these types of pitchers, and they're cheap, relatively speaking. So I think he could be on the move. And obviously the Giants aren't contending, despite what some people want you to think.
Yeah.
Like Mike Yastrzemski's like one of the best players according to FWAR in the majors this year.
Oh, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. Nuts. Okay. Last one on the list here I wanted to go over in depth, and we'll just kind of do a quick fire in the last three. Robbie Ray for the Diamondbacks. This is a guy who's popped up in trade rumors many years past. I feel like it
hasn't happened.
And it's never happened. Last year, there were a lot of rumors around him last year, even going to the Twins.
With the Yankees
Twins
were one of the bigger ones too. Yeah, true.
And so he's gotten off to a really bad start this year. Still has the strikeouts like always, but it's the walks. Like, oh my gosh, I just pulled this 8.3 walks per nine. That's a walk per inning. That's terrible.
It's really bad.
But people look at the strikeout numbers and think they can fix him. He would be probably the cheapest starter out there in terms of what you can get back for it if he does put it together.
One of the fastest, like this year, lefties of all time to get to 1,000 strikeouts. Believe it or not, as bad as he's been, he gets a lot of Ks. Like
he gets a lot. He gets a lot. You floated out maybe a potential trade that could be a 1-for-1 swap.
So we talked about this in the beginning of the year about the Twins getting him, maybe flipping him for Eddie Rosario, but that didn't quite happen. Not saying it's the Twins, but I'm saying there's a scenario, there's a possible same situation. I'm going to go with the Brewers and say Avisaíl Garcia flipping to the Diamondbacks because, like the Twins, Arizona has a lot of left-handed outfielders. They have David Peralta, Calhoun, and only Starling Marte is the mainstay right-handed batter in that outfield. I think he'd be really good, Avisaíl Garcia, in Arizona, just because it plays in the ballpark, kind of like Milwaukee, has a chance to have offensive numbers, hits the ball super hard. Not an amazing fielder, but he has pretty good speed, and that's kind of what the Diamondbacks are all about. They love their speed guys. They always have sneaky speed. And Robbie Ray, as far as does he fit the Brewer profile? Absolutely. I think this guy would be huge for them because they might try and make him Josh Hader. I mean, this guy's got, like I said, a lot of strikeout potential, even though it doesn't really look like it based off of him being a starter. But could he be one of the best relievers maybe by next season? Possibly. But he's only here for 1 year for that rental, but the Brewers could sign him for nothing based off of how poor he's been the last few years.
You want to know who he reminds me of? What the Brewers did last year, Drew Pomeranz.
I could see that too. That's crazy.
They made him they traded for him he's with the Giants, I believe, and they made him a reliever, and he was really good in the bullpen. And Pomeranz is a big strikeout guy.
Yeah.
Before that too, and so that could be a thing the Brewers do. But they didn't get they let Pomeranz go. So, or did they sign him? Yes. No, I don't think they did.
I think they let him go.
Robbie Ray could kind of be that guy. I don't know if the Brewers, why would they make that deal though? That's the thing. Like they're not really contending.
But do they need Avisaíl Garcia?
No, but like I just don't know why they would. I don't know.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that's just one fit. I mean, the Rays could do it too. There's possibilities there.
It's the teams that kind of have this feel for pitching.
To be honest, it's the ones that are, I think, more analytical than the others, and I think the Brewers and the Rays are like top front in the game when it comes to that.
And the Rays with their injuries are probably in play for any pitcher.
Exactly.
Right
yeah. Why not?
So, all right, let's do quick fire for these last 3 names, and we'll send it off. Number 1 on this quick fire, Dylan Bundy for the Angels has had a revival season. Been with the Angels. He had a bad start his last start, but his ERA is still around 2.5. Do you think he's on the move? And if so, what are some potential teams real quick?
No, I don't think so. I think since they lost Tyler Skaggs in that unfortunate event, Dylan Bundy's got to stay. He's there for another year. Might as well keep him controllable. You never know with Shohei Ohtani. It's unfortunate about him as well, but he is the hype. He is the future with Mike Trout, and you just got to keep Bundy there. You got to hope that Ohtani comes back at some point right as a pitcher. And Heaney's got to be better. I mean, I know you liked him, Luke, last year. Heaney is really bad this year.
Yeah, he's
got the strikeout stuff, but other than that, he just doesn't know how to pitch. So there are some growing pains for the Angels, and they might not pay off. But I don't think you trade Bundy. I think you run with this. This could be your ace now. And you got to keep him.
I agree. I think in Angel land, pitching has been very, very hard to come by. And once you get one, you stick with it, even if Bundy is maybe overperforming. I think they stick with him. I don't think he's on the move. Sticking with the Angels, Brian Goodwin, the outfielder. Now that the Angels called up Joe Adele, there's been a lot of rumors about Goodwin being on the move, kind of the outfielder out of that mix there because Upton's going to play his contract. Do you think Goodwin's on the move? And if so, what are your targets?
I think Goodwin is on the move. As far as where he goes, I really don't know. I mean,
could be anywhere, right? It could be really anywhere.
He's not a super valuable player, but he has platoon potential somewhere. He can hit. I mean, for a lot of teams that need that platoon outfield, like I really don't know what to tell you, Luke. I don't know.
I
would love to give you an answer,
needs,
but I don't
anyone needs those type of outfielders. Like,
yes,
he could go. Any contending team could use that. So I agree. It's hard to say. Last one, sticking with it, we're going to go with Tigers now. We've got Jacoby Jones and Jonathan Scope, 2 of their best hitters in that offense. Jacoby Jones, an outfielder. Scope's been really good at second base. What do you think about these 2 in the trade deadline?
As far as Jones, it's the same situation with Brian Goodwin. They're similar players. I think Jacoby Jones is kind of a little bit out of his head, especially at the beginning of the year when we mentioned he was one of the top 10 players in baseball and OPS. I don't know about Jones, but I like Jonathan Scope. I think you stay in the Central here and go with the White Sox. I think Chicago loves this home run thing going on, and with Madrigal possibly being out for the year with that injury, I don't like Danny Mendick as much as consistency. We're almost halfway through the season. I don't know if he continues his little tear that he's got going on, if you want to call it that. But Jonathan Scope, a little bit more threatening in that lineup, cleanup for the Tigers. He punishes balls. Obviously, he's always got the problem with off-speed, as Twins fans know, but fastballs, he crushes them. And that seems to be the profile for the White Sox these days. I like Scope in Chicago.
Yeah. What about this, the Athletics?
I could see that.
Because the Athletics have Tony Kemp.
And they really haven't had a second baseman for a while, a long time. You talk about the Angels not having a starter that is reliable. The A's have not had a reliable second baseman.
Yeah.
So that
he would be a good fit there. Yeah, and their offense has been kind of struggling a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
So they could really use him.
And I think he'd be cheap because he's only here for that rental year, so why not?
Exactly. All right, well, those are some names for the trade deadline to keep your eye on. Like I said, there's really not a lot of talk about this trade deadline. I don't think there's many blockbuster deals. So, usually in past years, you can kind of just search it and you find some big names. We had to really dig for these, so we might be way off, but I think a lot of these guys
we might get a few, and people be like, "What?"
Yeah, I know. We might be really on, or we might be just way off, and none of these players are even talked about. Who knows? Yeah. We did our research though. These are players that definitely deserve to be on the move because they're they're good players. It just depends on how this trade deadline shakes up, which no one really knows in this uncertain year. All right, well, we'll have Nick Budick back next week. We're going to be breaking down prospects next week. We're really excited about that episode. We've got a lot of prospects to talk about this year, especially my boy Dylan Carlson. We'll get into that. Hopefully he breaks out for a 7.
White Sox,
Dave Dunning with 2 Tiger starters.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that Casey Mize. Did you guys – wow, that was beautiful, man. Yeah. Him and Dunning put on a show.
Yeah, so we'll be breaking that down next week. Hopefully my boy Carlson has a breakout week, and we can have some good conversations about him. Right now it's not looking too good. But we're looking forward to that. If you want to listen to it, make sure you are subscribed to our podcast platforms. We're on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. And if you want to follow along with what we're doing, we're on social media, Facebook and Twitter. Just search @SitchesPod and send your questions or comments to thesitchespodcast@gmail.com. That's thesitchespodcast@gmail.com. All right, guys, take care. We'll talk to you next week.